Hey folks, it's Jeremy Kirkland. You're listening to Blammo. How we doing? We got a nice, fresh new episode this week. I'm very happy. I'm very happy to be here. Although I don't know, half of it maybe I'm just lying to myself. See, I'm managing whatever midlife crisis is kind of sweating out of me these days. I'm about to turn 40. Yeah. I don't know if you're older than 40, younger than 40. I don't even care, but right now I'm very grateful for my life. I'm grateful for everything that's happened, but I'm also just kind of freaking out, you know? Do you ever get that way? You're like, well, shouldn't I be here in my life, or shouldn't I be living there, or doing this thing, or owning that, or have done this? I don't even know what those things are. Because if someone's like, oh, okay, what do you want to do by your 40? I'd be like, I don't know, probably the same thing I'm doing now. I love my life. I love it. I love my kids. But I'm like, shit, maybe I need to run a marathon or buy a Porsche, which I can't afford. But maybe Porsche will sponsor the pod, which is not going to happen, but that's fine. I'll say this. I did the tattoo thing. I did the tattoo thing again. So I got a little ink. That's nice. I also got back into Pokemon cards through my kids. You know, we're organizing stuff and we're looking up rare cards and hollow things and whatever, and you know, all that fun stuff. But what the hell else? I don't even know how to talk. What the hell else am I supposed to do? Buy more pants? That's probably what I'll keep doing. Or I'll just keep making more pods. Maybe do some camping, something like that. But that's great because my guest is Graham Hiemstra this week. He is the founder of the outdoor publication Field Mag. If you haven't heard of it, you got to check it out. It's kind of it's a sick mag. They just published their first episode, but he's been doing a lot of digital stuff before this. But Graham is awesome. It's a good pod. Graham's a good dude. We get into his media diet. We talk the origins of Field Mag and how he's carved out this kind of amazing space where design and outdoors overlap. Great dude. I'm talking with my hands. You can't see it, but we're going to get into it. I'm glad you're here. Let's buckle up. Here we go. If you want, try around your shirt collar, like on your chest, because you're going to, yeah.
Risk stretching my shirt collar? How dare you?
Oh, man. I'm so sorry. I know. You know, it's funny. I slept in this shirt last night, and if you look at it, the shirt collar's all jacked up.
Oh, no.
I know.
It's really one of the hardest aspects of being a modern man, is dealing with shirt collars that are stretched out.
Right?
Nobody talks about this.
Nobody does talk about this. Yeah, here's my thing. It's like, hi, sharks. I started a new company called Tight Collars. And us at Tight Collars, every time you come on, did you fall asleep in your shirt like a total sloth loser last night? Well, I did, and I got tired of my shirt collar getting all stretchy when I'm moving around at night.
I quit my job in private equity in order to start this humble startup.
Yeah. Good God. I'll be honest though, I love Shark Tank. I hate it. I hate watch it.
Really? I've actually maybe never seen it.
What?
Yeah.
Well, you're dodging bullets over there. I'm envious.
Well, I mean, it's not to say what other awful television I watch.
What is your media diet?
The most impossible question for someone who works in media to answer. It's kind of all over the place. Within the last year or two, like so many, I have turned to YouTube as a medium for distraction as well as entertainment and enrichment. I have watched every episode of This Old House.
Oh,
that is a major
immediate pause. Whoa, go ahead. I'm sorry about this. You now need to explain this. It is one of the greatest shows that has ever been created. This Old House is one of the best shows ever.
I mean, it basically is, the Ken Burns of, regular contemporary television, or mainstream television, I guess. This Old House is just fantastic. It's just a couple of nice fellas and and some great talented women making old houses beautiful. And sometimes they have awful taste, but predominantly they have good, classic, straightforward design decisions, and you learn a lot. And, I aspire to someday, whether it's building a cabin or renovating an old apartment or something, I like to learn something. And I actually do learn something from that show. It's just good.
It is.
You feel good.
You do. It's, another show, my wife and I will watch is a show called Grand Designs.
I'm not
And
familiar.
oh, dude, dig in, dig in. So it's a British show, and for some reason, I think we tend to watch a lot of BritBox stuff because the dulcet tones of British voiceover, and it also is great because it's not set here. And I think we're looking for a lot of escapism at the moment. But yeah, Grand Designs is this show. It's been going on for ages, and I think it's some of this guy named like Kevin MacLeod. And the whole thing is he goes up to people, and they're people who are already building something, but like they talk a lot about money, which I think is really interesting in the sense that it'll be like, hey, I have 300,000 pounds and I am trying to build, it's usually these like grand designs, right? It'll be like, oh, I want to build this house, but I'm building like into a cliff because I wanted to do it in the Scottish Highlands. And this was the design, and this is the person that we hired. And, and then he visits them throughout the course of their build. So like, one episode might be 3 different houses stretched upon like 3 different years of build progress. And obviously everyone, like, they'll show when people are like, yeah, we ran out of money, or this took too long, or we couldn't do this because the soil wasn't, was too dense or whatever. And I would say basically every time you watch it, there are things that are just going wrong left and right. And so you get the tiniest bit of not like Schadenfreude or whatever, but like you get the tiniest bit of like, oh, it is more normal to try to do something, and there's just things that don't work right. Like there's you didn't account for the fact that you'd get a lot of rain here, or you didn't account for the fact that you'd run out of money, or a permit got held up, or you need a different type of argon glass. And it's great. It's so good. It's so good. But yeah, that's kind of like our This Old House versus like watching Hometown. And it's like Aaron and Ben, as sweet as they are, they're just like, yep, we did it. And then here's your picture that we drew you. Right. But like, they don't talk as much about money. And you realize how much money you need to build stuff.
Oh, it's astronomical. I was, like so many, I was obsessed with trying to build a cabin during the pandemic, and had an offer accepted on a little piece of land up in the Catskills. I mean, it was like an acre. Mm-hmm. And then it got bought out from underneath me by the neighbor. But I had almost we were going to build one of those backcountry hut company kits.
Yeah,
which is incredible. I'm friendly with the architect who owns it out of British Columbia. It's super rad guy, really outdoorsy. And we were going to work with them, do this kit, build a cabin, do a whole content series around it. Our cabin content on Field Mag was like going nuts at that time, and it ended up not working out. But during that time, yeah, you learn that it's like basically $500 a square foot or something to build new in most places in America right now. And that concept of spending that much money on like 1,000 square foot cabin that then the goal is to then Airbnb or something because you don't live within 3 hours of it is just like so bonkers.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't need to go any further into the homeownership crisis in America, et cetera, the disillusioned generations, yada, 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 all that good stuff. But, we're here to, if nothing else, anyone listening, go watch This Old House. Do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
Have a nice cup of coffee. Put your phone away.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Look at the good screen.
That's a no second screen show.
No.
Yeah.
You gotta be paying attention.
Speaking of home building, which we won't stay on, but did you read Abundance by Ezra Klein?
I have not. No.
Well, for all the folks who want to get deeper into home building and talk about that, there's a great section where they kind of talk about why, it explains more the housing crisis. It explains more about why it costs a lot to build. It doesn't point the finger on any specific party. It kind of shows how everyone's involved, and it's just tough to build a house here and to build things. Yeah, it's excellent.
I mean, he's a very intelligent person. I've consumed a lot of other stuff he's done, but that's I've taken a note. I'll buy it.
Highly recommend buying it. The audiobook is good too for all the audiobook heads out there.
Now we're going to get into a controversial take of if you listen to an audiobook, you did not read that book.
Oh, no, you totally read it. I read that MIT thing about how it activates whatever part of your brain that is still about learning. I'm so voracious at reading that I buy the book 2 to 3 times because I'll buy the audiobook and then I'll buy the Kindle book. And then if I really, really like the experience, I'll buy the physical book. And so that way I'm listening to it in the day. I can read it at night. And then, and then I'll buy the other book to own it. And also because I still love physical media.
That's interesting. I mean, despite working on the internet for 15 hours a day, I am a very analog person. And I don't think I've ever listened to an audiobook.
Oh, dude, it's so good. Jump in, man. The water's warm.
No, I prefer my reading to be at night and of the William Gibson variety.
Oh, okay. Respect. Let's talk about Field Mag. I mean, I want to talk about a bit about your stuff because you're a hard person to pin down because you got 900 different, traits and qualities and characteristics. But do you think that you're just more of like I'm a Renaissance man, or were you like some people where you just kind of form your own career by just saying yes to everything?
Well, I'd be curious to have you explain to me how you view my career or profession.
Yeah, I mean that's
Before I answer that.
quite the turn. I mean, but no, I think a lot of people, Chris Black and I talk about this a lot too, where, what does Chris Black do, right? Is he
Right.
he's a cultural commentator. I'm air quoting that word. He's a photographer, he's a writer, he is a creative director, he's a consultant, he's all that. And I firmly love that we're in this era because I too am like that in the sense that, yes, I make podcasts for a living, but I also work with clothing brands. I work with watch brands. I try to write. I also play guitar still. I mean, I don't think anyone needs to be defined by a specific characteristic, but I do think there's a lot of times you find what you do when you're not making money or don't want to make money. What are you doing for simple joy kind of accidentally defines you. Yeah.
Well, I'll resend my request for you to explain to me my own career.
No, it's okay.
I meant that in a way where I just wanted to get to see how you viewed it, because to me, it doesn't necessarily feel as nonlinear, or separate. I mean, to try and sum up how I got here or what I've done is largely dependent upon, or rather due to just sort of saying yes to everything and just kind of figuring it out. I mean, it's largely based upon seeing opportunities, being in the right place at the right time, getting to know the right people, being open to putting myself in situations where you get to meet new people. Certainly this was, I moved to New York in early 2011, straight out of school. I'd studied psychology. I had planned to go to grad school, then realized that 10 more years of school sounds awful. A very close friend of mine had moved to New York to become an architect, and I, packed up a backpack and a skateboard and moved in with him, and pretty immediately kind of tricked my way into an internship. A friend of mine was working in PR and was visiting New York, and I shadowed him to a bunch of different magazine offices and just sort of pretended that I worked with him.
Hell yeah.
And each of those offices, I got the card of the editor that we were meeting with, and then just reached out to them and was like, "Can I work for you?" And I wound up interning. And this was early 2011. It was a pretty fun, certainly wasn't the Graydon Carter era of journalism and budgets and things, but there was definitely a lot more freedom and abundance in media at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And very quickly I was, going on press trips, and people kind of thought that I was more experienced or more of an editor than I was. And, you never correct someone.
Wait, can you elaborate on they think you're more of an editor? What did they think that you weren't?
Well, I mean, I had been an intern for a month, and then I was going on a press trip to Scotland or something.
Hell yeah.
And the brand people would be like, "Oh, you're the founder of the company, right?" And I'd be like, "Well, I'm not founder, but
but I'm here."
Yeah. And, I mean, all credit to, I'm sure they were actually doing their research. But what I'm trying to say is that I was given a lot of great opportunities and put in positions where it was like, here's the ball, run with it. And I just kind of ran with it. Right. And so was kind of a natural storyteller, talk a lot among friends, writing kind of came naturally. Photography, I was always interested in photography. I ran the darkroom at my college back in Oregon, and I had a lot of friends that were kind of hobby photographers as well, and it was just kind of a thing that we all did. And so then when it came time to freelancing, it was like, well, it's always easier to get a pitch approved if you can provide photos too and write the story. So then I became a photographer.
Yeah.
And pretty shortly after, I was shooting the cover of High Stombiety magazine. And it was like, okay, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But you're not going to, you never volunteer your age. You never volunteer your position. you never out yourself in those situations if you're in group settings where people don't intimately know who you are,
Who
right?
told you to do that?
I don't know, I just figured it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I had an older brother growing up. I grew up skateboarding and snowboarding and like pretty heavily involved in kind of niche subcultures where I was always around other people of many different ages. And so it never benefited you to say you were 5 years younger than somebody or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was always just like, well, shit, this is cool.
I'm here, aren't I?
Don't
Yeah.
blow it.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So, anyways, that is the sort of origin story you didn't ask for. But yeah, I was working in media at a time where, I don't know, I sort of just made this up and I was like, oh, okay. I was working at this website called Cool Hunting, which was kind of the original early blog turned publication.
Mm-hmm.
They were actually founded, Josh Rubin founded it before YouTube existed. He was a UX designer at Motorola, I think. And yeah, he actually worked on the Razr. Shout out.
Wow.
Sickest phone ever.
Yeah, still I think it's better than the iPhone in terms of design.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'll take one. Side note, I was traveling the last few days and forgot headphones and I was just like raw dogging this like 8-hour flight across the Atlantic. And
You
I
didn't
was
even
like,
use the flight headphones?
well, it took me a while to get a pair, and I had a few flights before that that I didn't have anything, just a couple hour flights, and I was like, I don't have any games on my phone, and I was like, fuck, I wish I had Snake. I could
Snake's
easily
good, man. It
spend
holds
2
up.
hours playing Snake.
Yeah.
Instead, I just thought about my own mortality and
Oh,
all
that's
those
got to
good
make
stuff.
you feel good.
No, it's great. I loved it. But to get back to yeah, the sort of career
Cool
path.
hunting.
Yeah, Cool Hunting was a really interesting place to work in the early 2000s because they had a lot of influence and there was all the doors were open and they wrote about everything from men's style to technology to food and drink.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and as kind of a junior editor there and eventually a senior editor, I was given a lot of amazing opportunity to cover so many different things, to go to Northern Canada and take ice driving courses with Porsche, to go to, Milan Design Week every year. And then like Fashion Week in Iceland and like hilarious things like that when they were first starting and whatever. I don't need to go on about the ridiculous press trips, but the point is that I was able to just explore what I was interested in through this platform. And that was really unique. And at the time you could be a generalist on the internet to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot more influence of editors at the time. I do think that is like coming back now, but
I agree.
And so basically I found my niche in writing about design as well as men's style. And that again was sort of the amazing hashtag menswear era. I was able to go to some great fashion shows and be around a lot of really fun people and had some contemporaries that, are still running the game these days. Got to sit at a lot of dinners with a lot of really interesting people. And I kind of came to a point in my career, though, where I was going to Milan Design Week every year, Salone, and interviewing, Tadawando or whoever. And then I was like going and trying, I wrote some of the first stories about Petty at Emilio Ondor and that type of stuff. And I was like really interested in both these things. But I kind of got to a point where then I would have to start I was freelancing, I was getting some bylines at some of the, Complex, Style.com, et cetera, High Snobiety. But then I was getting kind of asked to like write about stuff that I wasn't personally interested in.
It is.
That was difficult for me because I was 24 or something. And I was like, I don't want to write about Rick Owens. I have no interest in Rick Owens.
Oh man, I'm sorry for your loss.
I mean,
it's fair.
Shout out Dick Ovens, but it's one of these things where I was just kind of like, what do I want to do? And also, you have to remember that at the time, nobody was interested in design under the age of 40, and from terms of furniture design, et cetera. There was no such thing as like all the people that are all over TikTok and Instagram now, like the young kids, showing their fucking loft or whatever. And whatever cool. There was no viral chairs, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I was working with Surface Magazine. I had a column in that magazine at the intersection of design and the outdoors. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I was speaking with them about potentially coming on and working with them. And I was like, okay, I was at kind of a crossroad where I was like, I could go in design and I could be kind of the young guy in design and like this could be an interesting career.
Mm-hmm.
I could also stick with style and menswear and like, continue to hang out with Gian and all these other interesting people that we were all in the same kind of space at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, I don't really feel directly interested in these things to more of a degree than I'm already covering them. And I was beginning to see the outdoor industry sort of evolving at the same time. And I grew up in the outdoors, and I grew up, very involved in snowboarding and lived all over the world for that and kind of chased that dream briefly. And I was seeing a lot of interesting, a lot of the articles that I was writing for these magazines at the intersection of kind of outdoor and design, they were getting a lot of traction. And my stories were getting many more views than anyone else's at that company at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I think there's something here. I can't be the only person that is interested in the outdoors, but lives in a city and enjoys style and enjoys culture and wants to go camping, but doesn't like need to be doing it every day.
Right.
And so, I was dumb and 25 or 6 or 7. And I was like, screw it, I'll start my own magazine. And I was working at Hearst at the time by that point and working with the men's titles there. And I was like, whatever, I'll give this a shot. And if it doesn't work in a couple of years, I'll just go back to working in the towers. And it's been 10 years. And
yeah. And I mean, Field Mag is
crazy.
legit. It's very, very good. It's also, it's a magazine that is like a keeper. You know what I mean? Like I subscribe to a lot of magazines and I'll buy a lot of different magazines. And there's, like Upstate Diary is one of my favorite mags. But there's certain magazines that I'll get and I'll keep, because I think there's a lot of magazines out there that people subscribe to and they probably don't keep, and that's fine. But when, whether like Field Mag or Apartamento or Upstate and all those things, it's nice because you want to keep it in your house. And I feel like a lot of the stuff is pretty evergreen in a good way, that it's not it's just not really dated. And I feel like you can open it up, and this is a compliment, but you can open up and they're like, oh, here's relevant stuff from last year. Versus I think maybe other magazines will sometimes not feel as relevant after, like the shelf life is shorter than the month even.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. And that is by design. Field Mag also grew out of, when I was concepting Field Mag, it was the rise of BuzzFeed, right? Which was the introduction of listicles. It was the introduction of like what we would probably now call brain rot media or content. I'm not sure if the word content existed back in those days, to date myself further. But what I mean is that from the get-go, I wanted Field Mag to be largely evergreen. I wanted it to be, we didn't even put dates on a lot of the content, a lot of the articles early on. Even until the most recent site redesign, the dates were at the bottom of the articles. And really the goal was to like create interesting, inspiring, entertaining content that could be, enjoyed in the moment or weeks later. And also, Field Mag really was and kind of remains just myself. I mean, we have a handful of other contributors. We got some great folks that are on Slack daily, and but at the end of the day, we're an extremely small team, and dozens of contributors. But really, it comes down to like we can only produce so much content. So if we're only really publishing a handful of new articles a week, but we have this incredible archive of evergreen content, then we can constantly be recirculating that evergreen content, and the site will constantly feel new and fresh, even if it's a story from even a couple of years ago.
Right.
That's sort of the behind the scene.
Yeah. I mean, and when not to get all nitty gritty, but I will say, if you like, how have you kind of maintained not being a big magazine? Because I feel like now, if you're like a heavily, widely circulated magazine, it's a bit of a death rattle because you have higher overhead, which requires more ad money or higher subscription rates and all these things. And in a lot of ways, I think physical media has become less precious to the mass, but the most precious to the few. And so it's like there's a line that you have to walk. So like, do you think about that intentionally in terms of growth and circulation? I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the through line of everything I've done and very much including Field Mag is just being able to adapt and to have some level of ability to kind of forecast, whether it's identifying early trends or it's keeping just a close eye on the industry at large, whether that's the outdoor industry or media industry. And, everything I've done is kind of just, relying on that gut instinct of like, okay, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling that this current project is taking this direction. We need to go in the other, yada, yada. So I would say that to directly answer your question, Field Mag has evolved a bunch over the years, and my goals and intentions and how I manage to keep the lights on has also evolved along with that. At the outset, I thought I was going to build a new media company, because I was building Field Mag in 2013, 2014. We went live in 2015. But all during that time, I was friends with Ben and Eric, who owned Gear Patrol. I was friends with, Jeff from Heist Noviety. I was friends with people that had media companies. And I was like, well, these are really smart, intelligent, great people, but we're also having dinner together. Like, well, they can do it. Why can't I do it?
Mm-hmm.
And, certainly any bit of success involves a considerable amount of luck. But even just like having the luck to be around these intelligent people when I was much younger than them and sort of much more inexperienced, but again, gaining a lot of experience, it just felt like, all right, well, fuck it, I could do it. I don't know, why not? So then early on, I was like, I'm going to build a media company. And really from the outset, we had like a distribution deal with this folk studio in Barcelona that publishes Apartamento and like all these things. And we were going to be their like North American counterpart and all this stuff. And then I don't know, very quickly just realized like, I don't really know how to do any of this. And so this is going to be much more difficult than I anticipated. But even for that, for a number of years, I maintained this goal of like trying to grow another media company. Right. And at the time, Vice, which I had also contributed to, was like blowing up, and it really just felt like there was opportunity. And then pretty quickly, in a handful of years, it kind of became apparent that without venture capital or some sort of private equity, like you kind of can't, maybe not can't, but I couldn't. And so, at one point we had 5 or 6 employees, and we were, doing, I use that employee kind of loosely, but people that were contributing a lot of hours and a lot of effort and a lot of great stuff. And I think it kind of dawned on me that that's not really what the world needs and or wants. And also, again, without a tremendous infusion of money and shift of direction, it just kind of wasn't going to happen. And so Field Mag's growth has always been kind of organic. And I feel like I'm maybe not articulating this well enough, but here's an analogy. So I was friendly with this guy, Ben G, in Portland, Oregon. He had a brand called Polar Stuff.
Yeah,
it was a hugely influential brand. It kind of came out of nowhere, right? Having coffee with Ben G in Portland one day, he said, in the early years, he said, if you present yourself as a band that only plays the local venue, you're never going to play the stadium show. We're presenting ourselves as a stadium show from the get, and we're getting treated like that. Right. So I kind of tried to do that. I thought that was interesting advice. So I'm going to give this a shot. So from the get, I had like fake bylines. I was writing everything that was on Field Mag for like years, but I had all these different bylines, and I was really presenting it as this was an actual company, and people thought it was company. I get emails like, this is for your marketing department or whatever.
Yeah.
And nobody knew that it was just me. And then I think that kind of bit me in the butt, because I think the culture shifted where all of a sudden people wanted an individual. They didn't want to read or support a big company without a person behind it. Right. And so I think this is a better way of explaining what I meant to be talking about a moment ago, which is like, I realized that actually the opposite could be beneficial, right? Is that if I do find fight my instinct to actually be the face of Field Mag and like put myself out there and use the first person and stuff, maybe that could also be of benefit. And I think now the way I describe Field Mag is we are the local band that maybe not local band, but we're the smaller band that's playing all the smaller venues, indie venues, and we're selling out every show, and everyone who's coming to the show is buying all the merch. Whereas, your outsides of the world, they're playing stadiums, but there's someone out front giving away tickets to whoever will walk by. And that's where we're at now. Is want to grow a media business any longer to that same degree of outside or something. And now I see a lot of value in using the first person, allowing our contributors to use the first person and to speak from their own personal experience and encouraging them to do that and to really focus more on our speaking to readers that know Field Mag, that type in .com, that follow us, on Instagram, that are buying the magazine, buying the print projects, collaborations, and things. And I think now it's much more important to be in the right hands instead of all hands.
Yeah. I mean, that's really well said. And I think that's, it does sound like it was more intentional than the kind of accidental luck you keep kind of referring to. But yeah, I mean, because the earlier people that you mentioned Jeff, he's not a high snob. You mentioned Gear Patrol, which is not what it was, and all these big things where, yeah, and I think that's, kind of what I was saying earlier, where it's like when you're super large, there's this kind of like dangerous death rattle. This is a direct quote from a person who used to work at GQ, and he said that GQ is now running with around a 16th of what it was, and they're still making the book, their words. And I think that's fine. That's great. Every industry shifts and evolves, whether you attribute it to some type of industrial revolution or whatever. I don't celebrate people losing jobs, but I do think that like every industry is going to evolve. And I think, GQ as an example, while I love Sam, I love the whole team over there. Obviously, I love Will. What is more interesting is Will or Sam.
For sure.
And I think that's been the thing that's really kind of come out of the, I don't know, individualist era or whatever thing we want to call it that we're in, where it's like, yeah, people want to connect more with, and I say this all the time whenever I do pods, because someone will come on, I did a pod not that long ago of a person who had run a brand, and all they wanted to talk about was the brand. And anytime I shifted the conversation to them as an individual, they were like, yeah, and they kind of jumped back on the brand. And I very politely interrupted them. And I was like, you did that interview in 30 other outlets.
Yeah.
And I was like, no one is really that listens to this is going to care about that as much as, all the passion you're putting into it. I was like, when was the last time you got your coffee order wrong? And what was your coffee? And like, not like that, like fixes everything. But the point I was trying to make in that, and what you were saying too, is just like, yeah, but people want to connect more with individuals. You want this like empathetic connection now that I think is really beautiful, and you love hearing about it. It's why, for some reason, when you look at like any sort of viral content, it's all like the everyman stuff, where it's like, oh man, I too was stuck on the runway, or I too like had to deal with this, and people are like, oh yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Versus some of these other things where it's like, oh, you were on the high horse on a rocket ship. I'll never in any world be in the same echelon as that.
Yeah.
And it's, the interesting thing, and this is where it gets weird, is there is a level of like success though that I think your audience doesn't want you to have. And a friend of mine who runs a business was like, oh yeah, he's like, the thing you have to deal with whenever you run your own business is most of the time your patrons, readers, whatever you want to say, consumers, they want you to be successful, but never more successful than them. So I'm curious if how you've had to deal with that, and what that's looked like.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would say that, I view Field Mag as an outdoor lifestyle publication, and I think there's less of a threat of that in the outdoor space. Like, no one's really making a ton of money in the outdoor space, whether you're an athlete or you're working at a brand or you're in media, right? So it's not exactly the same as like menswear or fashion in general, where, you can actually be working with serious budgets, and like, the biggest brand partners that we work with, their marketing budgets are probably a fraction of, whatever watch company that someone else may be working with, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, but I would say in general, Field Mag's audience and, for dare I say community is really positive. And that's really kind of a beautiful thing and something I'm super thankful for. One of my closest friends, who was the architect that I mentioned earlier that I moved to New York with, he had a sneaker startup for a while that, he missed out on. He did a lot of great things and pioneered a lot of things that sneaker platforms now all use. And But the reason I mentioned that is that he would do these giveaways where he would give away, this was when the Yeezy first came out, et
Oh
cetera. He would
yeah.
do these giveaways that were, I mean, truly, he would have thousands of people, on his app trying to get these things. The comments were just grotesque. Like,
Ugh.
KYS, KYS, like, oh my, he's so aggressive, so negative. And one time we were talking, he was like, do you get emails and like DMs and stuff like telling you to kill yourself and just like
Ugh.
hate? And I
That's
was like,
awful.
no, dude. And he was like, oh, I get like hundreds of these a day.
Hundreds a day?
Well, I don't know. That was an
Okay.
exaggeration. But he was like, I get
He's
many
getting a
of
lot.
them
Yeah.
from just like disgruntled sneakerheads.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I'm really thankful that the people that are reading my corner of the internet are like people just want to go on a hike and like enjoy nature. They're not like trying to buy sneakers to flex on their, whatever neighbor. And, it's an interesting thing. Obviously, these are apples and oranges. But what I'm trying to say is that people that really love Field Mag are amazing. And, they're in the comments, they're in the DMs. They showed up to the magazine release parties we had in New York and in Portland, and the amount of people that came up and said, oh, hey, I wrote this one article years ago, or like I've been following for years and we've DM'd, or maybe we've never even met, but they were like super interested and knew a lot about the brand and were just genuinely passionate. It's like kind of incredible. I don't know, like, it really, at the end of the day, I'm just a dude in his tiny little apartment in Manhattan, like sending emails for 20 hours a day. And so then to like go out and meet people that are genuinely connected with what we're doing, it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's, when people talk about making any sort of brand, a lot of times you're like, oh, you need to have a stickiness. Like, what's your, I've been an advisor and stuff for a few different folks, and a lot of times like that somehow comes up in a deck or whatever it is. And not that like everyone needs that, but like, what is the reason people keep returning? And I think, yeah, when you can have a community, I mean, I'll say this, like we have like a Slack group of a bunch of Blammo listeners and stuff. And it's crazy because it's just the most like kind, like optimistic, like gentle part of the internet where people will get, help and questions on like parenting and trips and travel and all this. And everyone's just like chill and great. And I think some of it is, the fact that like you have to pay to be a part of it. So a lot of times any sort of platform that requires a level of barrier or to entry, most people don't want to pay to be an asshole. So you just like you have this like really happy group, and I love that. And
I think that's really interesting. I mean, to just chime in on that real quick, is with issue 2 of the print magazine next winter, potentially earlier, we'll be introducing subscriptions. Currently, you can only buy just one-off issues. And along with those subscriptions, we're looking into different ways to like incentivize and kind of grow the community further. And there is a lot of interest, it seems, hopefully, from readers and people within the Field Mag universe that they want to be more, connect with other people. They want to go to events, et cetera. And having a Slack group is something that, I will likely be introducing as well. And I think what's interesting is like, among the part of the team currently that are on Slack, these are all folks that have other jobs.
Yeah.
Or they're freelancers, but they're part of the Field Mag Slack team and stuff. And we're always dropping in, this new product drop. Like there's so much good shit that we're sharing in there that I just don't have time to turn into articles or Instagram posts or newsletters or whatever. And I don't know. I think it could be interesting. Or if people think it really boring and ask for a refund, but we'll find out.
Oh, that'll happen. I get that. It's funny because you had mentioned, hate stuff. I'll occasionally get, because I always will be like, hey, I love feedback. Share with me your feedback. And I'll get some interesting feedback. The funny thing is, there's been a couple times I have this thing on my Gmail that will, if the person that emailed me is also on LinkedIn, it shows me their LinkedIn profile.
Oh, interesting.
And what's funny is a lot of times the people that will be just kind of like bizarre and some of the feedback, and it's usually overly negative without any sort of like critical feedback, which is, lets you grow from it. I read it and I'm like, how do you have time for this? It's like, managing director of whatever desk at Goldman Sachs. And it's just like, dude's making 7 figures and all of a sudden decided he wanted to dunk on
complain about a podcast
guest because they mentioned this or whatever. And, it's so funny. But
never underestimate the stupidity of people and the
Yeah.
pettiness.
But I will say I get far more of people just like being really like kind and generous and empathetic, and it's that I'm grateful. But yeah, it's
Sure. And I mean, I think that also, though, aligns with what we have talked about throughout this conversation, which is the like evolution of culture and the evolution of the way that people consume content, the way that
yeah,
they view their own relationship to the content. There's a little bit of parasocial relationship going on with
yeah.
like me being the field mag guy and yourself, being the blammo guy among the other guys that you are. And I think that's a really interesting thing. And, there's obvious benefits to being able to promote your own company via yourself being a real person, but it can also opens up, I think, the ability for people to sort of critique it in a way where they don't really understand all that's going on behind the scenes, right? Like
Yeah.
there is an unbelievable amount of work that goes on to create your podcast, to create Field Mag. And if you have never worked in media or, sort of created something on your own, like you have no idea. And I think it's really easy to critique these things without understanding that there's 300 emails waiting in your inbox that need to be responded to yesterday. And, if you don't do that, you're not paying rent tomorrow or something.
Yeah, I do think there is, and it's not like a woe is me, but it's always nice when you meet someone else and you're like, oh, you get it. Like you're in the trenches. But I think there is and I talk to other people about this too. When you leverage yourself and you try to create like some level of empathetic connection, for me, I'll say this, the criticisms hurt far more than anything else because I don't have anything to hide behind, and I'm not the kind of like, there are some people whom they're friends of ours that, we don't have to name who their own persona has armor on it, because the people connect with them because they're a badass and they act like a badass and they pretend to be a badass and they'll always be a badass, right? Versus someone like me, the stuff that people connect on with me are things that do not make me a badass. They just make me more human per se in that world. And so when it gets criticized, you're like, fuck, dude, that really hurt. It's like dunk on the fact that I love the Beatles. Fine, go for it. But like when it turns into some other thing and you're like, that's a really personal comment, or it's like, it's so funny because then you're like, damn it, like I'm leveraging this to grow, but you also have to find a way to like create some level of filter that's also not just, oh, well, that person fucking sucks, which is like,
Sure.
I'll forward it. There's a couple people that I'll forward some of these emails or DMs to, and they'll be like, fuck that dude. And I'm like, okay, thanks. I feel better, but it's like, I can't say that. I'm not that guy. I'm still a preacher's kid, like I can't.
That's funny. Well, hey, at the end of the day, I think that, if everybody loves what you're doing, then what you're doing is not unique enough.
Oh, all right. Where'd that sage advice come from?
I don't know. I've just always sort of I've always thought that.
Yeah.
And I've always just sort of made decisions based off of my interests and that gut feeling, like I was saying earlier. And I think it probably comes from I grew up skateboarding and
The kind of punk rock attitude.
Well, I think the most important thing in skating is style. And it doesn't matter what tricks you can do. I'd rather be able to do 3 tricks that look good than all the tricks and look like shit.
Yeah.
And it's, that's where my interest in style comes from. That's where my interest in, whatever. And that sort of DIY mentality of, fuck it, I'll give it a shot. When you do these things that are so, that takes 1,000 tries and you're bloodied up from falling on the ground or whatever, and before you land it, but the feeling of, succeeding in what you're trying is amazing. I think that's a lesson that like has carried throughout all that I do. And I feel that sort of perspective of like, well, not everyone's going to like what you're doing. It's the same that my favorite pro skater as a kid is not the same as, maybe my best friends. And that's fine. And that's the whole reason that, different brands exist. It's the whole reason. And to bring that further out, it's like the whole reason that different fashion labels exist, or the different reasons that 20 different brands make the same backpack, whatever, but in different colorways or presented in different ways. And it's like, I think that media is much more difficult to view ourselves that way. And you may not, there's 1,000 other podcasts. If someone doesn't like yours, then eat shit. Go listen to the other one. I don't know. Who cares?
True. You're absolutely right.
For, every one person that's vocal about negativity, there's probably 10 others that really enjoyed what you do, or thousands of others, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of how I try and approach it, because at the end of the day, it's like I said, I'm the only one, my poor wife has to listen to me complain on occasion that she'll get me to talk about work, which is rare, but it's really just me sitting at this desk in my little apartment. And I think if you don't have that mentality of trusting what you're interested in and understanding that that may work or it may not, I think then it's going to be really hard to, continue to maintain a business.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. What do you, for folks who are, I think like the camping era of all my friends is reaching its peak, and to where people are like, let's just get an RV, or let's go to the national parks while they still exist. Let's go to, wherever. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Like at one point I camped a bunch in Alaska on this like rehab project, and I'm like, okay, but that was 20 years ago. So I'm like,
it's amazing. I haven't made it to Alaska yet.
Well, I don't say it as a flex. I more say it as when I got ready to, I was like, okay, yeah, like my daughter wants to go camping. Cool. I was like, let me get some gear. And I was like, oh shit, gear is expensive. What is the gear I need? Do I, and also I'm kind of a bit of I prefer a life of luxury in camping. And I want a pad, and I want a cool, and do I want a rainproof tent? And I know some of these things you talk about a lot in Field Mag, but I'm curious for you yourself these days, and I'm sure you're the DM to a lot of your close buddies who are getting into this stuff. Are there certain things that you say, or is there a price point or entry point to like get the gear and get out there?
Well, I mean, there's a few questions in there, and I'll kind of speak broadly about it. Is like, I mean, I think that the whole GORP thing, which a certain editor may feel is dead.
Yeah.
I was in Norway last week, and let me tell you, Oakley is the biggest brand in the fucking world. Like
Oakley.
I mean, every single Norwegian was wearing Oakley speed shades, Salomon XT6s or Hokas.
Yeah.
And like a fisherman's sweater. And I was like, this is such a crazy look. I love it. And, being in New York, you see these sort of Arc'teryx Scorpy kids, out front of Supreme or whatever they are now. And I think it's great. I think it's like easy to kind of poke fun at, like if someone has never been outdoors and all of a sudden they're dressed in head to toe, Arc'teryx. But that's fine. I think that if you buy hiking shoes and that brings you on a hike and you've never been on a hike before, like that's sick. That's amazing. If you learn to climb in a gym and then that leads you to meeting other people that want to take you outside to go rock climb, like that's amazing. You just became someone, you had a new experience that may change your life. And I think it's easy to kind of hate on the like hyper GORP trend, but then you travel and you see, I mean, there's a lot of people. Like the GORP thing is really much bigger than I kind of realized.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I mean, I think like you see in New York, like you see it a little bit, but to go to I was just in Stockholm and then in Oslo and the Lofoten Islands and the Arctic Circle. And it was like everybody under the age of 30 was like dressed like a beautiful GORP model. And maybe that's just the Nordic countries. But
yeah, Nordics, man, they're handsome. They're handsome and beautiful. Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
And
they're tall too. God. Sorry.
It's okay. We can fawn over all the beautiful Nordics as well, or for the whole rest of this pod. But but what I'm trying to say is that like I think it's an interesting moment in fashion and in sort of outdoor world where obviously there's more mainstream interest in the outdoor than there's ever been. This was spurred by the pandemic and as well as fashion's ongoing obsession with technical outerwear and functional design. I think it's evolving into so many different things. You have fantastic brands like Roa and District Vision that speak to like a lot of different people but make high quality products. And to the question of price points or where I point people, Field Mag, we write about a lot of expensive products, and sometimes that does, to take a step backwards, that does annoy people to some degree. But I'm interested in, the Scandinavian brands, the Japanese brands, the brands that maybe you're not familiar with, right. Introducing those kind of, if brands and designers and products to a larger audience that is interested in style. And it's like, I think if you are new to the outdoors, or maybe you're going, or haven't gone camping in a few years and now you're looking into it, there's a lot of really cool products out there from major labels, as well as incredible cottage industry brands. The whole ultralight backpacking scene is super interesting. There's tons of makers, owner operators that are doing really cool things. And a lot of it is very expensive, but it is also product that you can buy and use for decades, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, is one thing. People seem to be okay with, certain people seem to be okay with spending, whatever, $300-400 on a pair of hard bottom shoes because they have a wedding coming up and they think this is an investment in my, closet, my sartorial future, right? And then they're like, oh, this tent costs $400.
Yeah.
Like, you can't fucking live outside in those shoes. You could live in this tent.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that outdoor gear is like, you can buy shitty versions of it. Amazon is full of absolute garbage that's going to fail on you and ruin your trip, and you're never going to go outdoors again. But if you have the means to purchase a mid-tier product, tent, backpack, rain jacket, and you get to use it, and you get to see it function, that's beautiful. And it's going to enhance your experience in the outdoors. And at the end of the day, the number one thing that's going to ruin your experience outdoors is like your feet hurting because you're wearing the wrong shoes, or maybe you didn't, for one reason or another, or like your tent not working or your rain jacket not working because you are kind of improperly, maybe you just have shitty gear, right? And I think that's tough because there's a lot of people right now that are getting into the outdoors and they don't, obviously money's tight for many, many people right now. And so I'm not saying that you need to buy the most expensive thing, but I will say that a quality product is going to improve your life, whether that's in your daily life or it's with camping gear. Like my favorite pants that I wear 4 days a week are these like Lemaire trousers that are probably the most expensive thing I've ever bought.
Yeah.
Shout out pandemic sale.
Yeah.
But I wear them constantly, and it's like I'm probably down to 25 cents a wear by this point, or 5 cents a wear.
The old cost per wear theory. Yeah, I've been there.
You got to have that math going on in the old
babe,
noggin.
if I have it this long, it's like cheaper than a cup of coffee.
But it's, we're back to the 2010s heritage mentality, right? There's a reason that Danner and Filson and these brands are still existing. And the North Face is owned by VF Corp and, TBD on some of their products, but they also make some great stuff.
They do.
And there's also 40 other brands that are independently owned that make amazing product at a similar price point. And that's what Field Mag aims to introduce people to.
Yeah. I had a person on and we had to cut this part out because it was almost a little too spicy. But I was asking him about, there's a premium entry point for a lot of outdoor brands. And for anyone who's going to try to guess it, it's not that recent, so it doesn't matter. But they were like, I'm sorry that the products we make outlast your hobby, And I was like, damn, like that's such a great
That's so good.
Because it was like, because some of these people where it's like, oh, it's like all of a sudden wanting to get into, I don't know, weightlifting. And you're like, I'm going to get huge. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to go to the gym every day. And so I need my gym gear and it's not a huge, cost to enter. And maybe life catches up with you and you maybe decide you don't want to get so huge again or whatever it is. And it's like, all right, well, the gear is there. But it's like, to go camping, because that was my thing. So I was like, well, maybe we'll just go a couple times in the summer. I'm like, shit, this is going to cost me like $3,000 to get all the gear. And I got kids and we got to figure this out. And that's even like having somebody give you a discount code in a DM here and there. And so it's just like, I was like, well, I don't even know. But I also looked at it as like a single experience versus get this stuff and use it and go camping every year.
Yeah.
Forever.
Campgrounds, many campgrounds, especially out west, $10 a night. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And, this is, it's difficult to speak to that from someone who lives in Manhattan. There's not a lot of public land in the Northeast.
Yeah.
A lot of campgrounds are private. They're much more expensive. They're less beautiful. You know, the access to nature here is much more difficult. You certainly have to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a certain barrier of entry for sure. There's not many, but there are some rental options. We've written a few stories about those. There's a fair amount of resale platforms now for the
Yeah.
outdoor gear, which is fantastic. They didn't exist that long ago. Yeah, I think it's tough, but at the same time, it's like camping's great. Car camping's great.
Yeah.
But also, whatever, not everyone loves it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
My brother-in-law, they went on a camping trip, and the people they were going with had an RV, and they were bringing the RV out there, and or like a pop-up, whatever. And then he was like, "Oh, I'm going to rent an RV and I'll attach it to my truck." And he rents the RV,
Bold.
attaches it. Yeah, very bold. And I love it. And he was like, my only regret is when we got there, I saw all these other people picking up their RV that was just delivered to the campsite. He's like, I didn't realize you could just
I didn't know
you could
that.
just have it delivered there. He's like, so instead I just like ripped up my truck driving across the US
Oh my goodness.
with, 2-ton RV, but being pulled behind you. And he's like, yeah, the new thing is see if wherever you're ordering from, because I guess there's like some nationwide, they do like rentals, and they'll drop off things at different campsites. I mean, they weren't going like total backwoods off the grid.
Right.
It was a little more glamping, but
well, I mean,
yeah.
the glamping thing is really interesting. 5, 6, 7 years ago, that was sort of had a negative connotation to it, and I think now it's just fully mainstream. And like, there are many people who come to the website looking for cabin content and glamping content and treehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And we have all these like fantastic roundups from all around the country, from state to state to regional to yada yada. And there are so many really cool, landscape hotels and yurt focused hotels, and geodesic domes and RVs and micro cabins and all these things, like kind of all over the country, all over the world, really. And I think that's a great way for people to get outdoors, is to sleep in a real bed, and feel rested, and then be able to maybe take a shower at the end of the day. Like, I love backpacking, I love camping, I love doing gnarly adventures, but I also love a shower, and I also love, I sleep like shit in a tent. I wish it wasn't so, but it is. And it's like, I get it. And I think...
So you co-sign the whole glamping thing versus someone being like a purist, and it's like, you can't have a toilet or else you're not a real camper.
I mean, unless you dig a cat hole. I think everyone should dig a cat hole at some point. But, I think you really learn a lot about yourself shitting in the woods. But pro tip, find a smooth rock.
Oh, there you go.
Don't use a pine cone. But I think they're different. I think, for a long time, the outdoor industry was defined by people who defined themselves by a single activity and a single point of view. And that's where I saw opportunity, was to create something a little more generalist and take a little bit more of a gentle approach to the outdoors, coexist, not conquer, that type of mentality. And that's changed. There's a majority of people who do outdoor activities do multiple activities. They're not just a mountain biker, or they're not just a, runner or whatever. And I think the number of cool brands and the number of media, obviously the amount of fucking content there is out there that is about marathon running or whatever, like, obviously encourages people to do these different things.
Yeah.
But I think it's totally fine that, I love, like I said a moment ago, like, I love to go ultralight backpacking and go and hammer out miles and be uncomfortable and get really deep into the wilderness and like be way out there and go skinny dip in a lake where there's no one around or whatever. And then
You've done that?
Oh yeah. Come on.
Dude, I'm a clown. I'm a little scared. I'm scared of like leeches and stuff. Like, what if I get a leech on my nuts and it's over?
I mean,
this is not a joke.
I mean, watching Stand By Me as a kid has always instilled that fear in me.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm saying is that's also, I also enjoy car camping and pulling up to a campsite and bringing the big ass, roto molded cooler out, drinking 1,000 beers, around the campfire. Like, that's amazing. That's great. And I think there's room for all of it. I definitely encourage you to drop trowel and jump in a natural body of water soon. I think will cleanse the soul.
I think you're right. I'll have to find some time.
Yeah,
I'll
maybe
do
not
it.
the East River or the Hudson, but
Yeah. Yeah.
there's plenty of swimming holes just outside the city.
There you go. There you go. Damn. Bars. This is very, very informational and wonderful. Graham, I thank you so much for your time. Before we wrap, I want to be conscious of your time. Do you have anything you want to add or mention that I didn't discuss that you're like, dude, I wanted to fucking tell you this and you asked me too much about that?
No, I mean, I would say that we've been publishing online for 10 years. We just released our first full editorial print magazine. Issue 1 is out now. Got 4 amazing covers from 4 different amazing photographers. And yeah, there's a lot more good shit to come.
Awesome.
I hope you like it.
Will do. I'll put a link in the show notes and stuff. But
Cool.
Graham, thanks so much. It was great chatting with you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, Jeremy, thank you for having me. It was fun.
You've been listening to Blammo. Our show is produced by Blammo Media. We're edited by Amar Lowell, and our theme music, as always, by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. If you like what you heard, you know the drill. Share the pod with a friend. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Give us 5 stars or thumbs up on whatever other thing you're listening to us on, whether it's Dingledorp or Bing Bong, whatever it's called. But you can also follow us on Instagram for all the hot content. If you want to talk to us and give us your hot take, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us an email at info@blamopod.com. Last but not least, super ultra important. If I had a air horn, I would press it right now. You got to come and join us over on Patreon because the fun never stops over there. Look, the live show, the free show, whatever you want to call this, we take breaks here and there, but Patreon, it never stops. And we also got exclusive shows like Die Workwear, hosted by Derek Guy and Peter Zotolo, and the Triple J Show, hosted by yours truly with John Moy and Gene DeLeon. There's just a ton of stuff over there. So check it out at patreon.com/Blammo. If not, no worries. We got hundreds and hundreds of free episodes in the feed and more to come. So we will see you all soon.